1.
We are up in the bird's nest here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm Brendan Mortensen alongside Annie Claff. Annie, we have deceived the people. We told them last week that we would be back on Wednesday at 11 a.m. That was our intention. This one wasn't our fault.
Yeah.
The Orioles game got rained out last night. They are now playing a doubleheader. The first one is starting early today, 12:30?
Yeah, something like that.
And so we could not go live at 11 a.m. because we would have been right up into O's Extra, which is not very nice. And we want you to go watch O's Extra. So this one wasn't our fault.
Yeah, no, this one was not our fault. And we continuously tried to remain consistent week to week.
We
but
never do
we
it.
consistently fail. So apologies to the fans, but we are here now, and that's all that matters.
I think next week we might be here on Wednesday at 11 a.m., but we never know. This one wasn't as egregious as last week when we went live on Thursday at like 1 p.m. Tuesday at 1 p.m.?
Yeah.
This week we are at least on Wednesday, but it is 1 hour early at 10 a.m. We usually like to say, take your lunch break with us. If you're taking your lunch break at 10 a.m. No, but I like to think it.
That's a new
And
that's
people
a new
are maybe
one
taking their lunch break with us. If you're taking your lunch break at 10 a.m., take a coffee break.
Yeah.
Not a lunch break at 10 a.m. I think that's too early for lunch.
Yeah.
I'm a late lunch person anyway. I eat lunch at like 1 or 2.
Once 11 a.m. hits, like I'm ready for lunch.
I don't think I can do an 11 a.m. lunch.
Yeah, but you also don't
I'm
like
a
BLTs,
1 or 2
so
lunch person. I know. That's a callback
I
to the last
discovered,
podcast.
call back to the last podcast, that one, I've been thinking about it all week, things that I wish that I liked is black coffee, because then I wouldn't have to spend money on like milks and creamers and everything like that.
That's a good
I
one.
would have saved so much money if I liked black coffee. So
That's
I'll
a
just
good one.
force myself to.
And that's why people wait a week for the payoff from the beginning of last week's podcast for the beginning of this week's podcasts. That's why you got to stick around week to week.
Exactly.
All right, Annie, we've got a lot to talk about today. 2 major Orioles are back. Zach Eflin made his return. Ramón Urías was just reinstated from the injured list this morning. And we'll get to all that. But first, I need to ask your permission to go on a rant.
Oh, yeah, please be my guest.
Because I have a rant to go on.
Uh-oh.
Last week, I ended the podcast angry, and this week I am beginning the podcast
I don't know,
angry.
we might lose listeners after this.
I know. I'm starting off with the rant. We'll see how that goes. Over the weekend, Annie, I was covering the Baltimore Orioles out in Anaheim, covering the Angels series, and I tweeted out that an Adley Rutschman line drive out, it was a nice play by the shortstop, had a higher expected batting average than Gunnar Henderson's home run, which was a home run in 26 out of 30 ballparks, and it really got people fired up. I mean, you would have thought I tweeted something horrible, but all I tweeted was that an Adley Rutschman line drive out had a higher expected batting average than Gunnar Henderson's home run. I understand that didn't take where it fell in the ballpark into account. That's the whole point of expected batting average. And the comments that I received were just all over the place on expected batting average. It ranged from expected stats are made up nonsense, which everything's made up nonsense. Baseball is made up nonsense. You want to get philosophical? We can get philosophical. Everything's made up. To this is propaganda to convince fans that players that are bad are actually good because you're just propping them up with expected stats.
No.
It's not what it is at all. Expected stats are not a made-up thing. It's just math, and it just provides context. And if you are getting on a high horse about, expected stats aren't gospel, they don't mean this, they don't mean that, nobody's saying they're gospel. You're making up a thing to be angry about. Nobody is saying that they are more important than the actual stats on the field. However, expected stats are a good way to provide context for what a player is doing. All expected batting averages is taking comparable batted balls with an exit velocity of this and a launch angle of this and saying, how many times have baseballs that have been hit like that, on average, become hits? That's all it is. Doesn't take location into account. That's the whole point of it. But the only thing it does is say, okay, if a player is hitting the ball this hard at this launch angle, it's a hit this percentage of the time. If a ball has a 700 expected batting average, it is a hit 7 out of 10 times. That's all we're saying. That's it. And it provides context for somebody like Adley Rutschman, who has been getting a little bit unlucky, his expected batting average is a lot higher than his actual batting average, which just means the way he is hitting the ball at that exit velocity and at that launch angle, you would expect him to have a batting average that is higher than the one that he has right now. His statistics on the field are his statistics on the field. Yes, he has had some bad luck, but the results have to show up at some point too. So I am not saying that, his numbers on the field don't matter because all of his expected stats are great. It's not what anybody's saying. Nobody's using it as gospel. Again, you're making up a thing to get angry about. But if you're acting like a dribbler to the pitcher is the same thing as a guy who hits the ball 110 miles an hour on the screws and it's just right at the left fielder, if you're telling me that that tells you the same thing about the hitter, you're just wrong.
Right.
It tells you two completely different things about the hitter. And the amount of comments that I got saying that expected stats were some made-up magic thing that doesn't make any sense and you should never use, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's not magic. It's just math.
Right.
It's more context. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of, the reason that baseball is the way that it is because there's so much math and statistics that go into it.
There's so much math.
Which is why it is so much harder to understand than a lot of other sports. And it's not just all rainbows and butterflies and the numbers that you see are the numbers that you're going to get. And Adley Rutschman is the perfect example as well because this is a guy that whose advanced metrics are so much better than his results. And even Cody Ashe has mentioned this where, it's pretty hard to be coaching a guy when you know that the advanced metrics are like this and the results are like this. And obviously that's going to be very hard and you have to look at the results. But with a guy like Adley Rutschman, it makes perfect sense why his expected batting average is 275 and in the 73rd percentile comparatively to his actual batting average of 203. Because you look at the whole other rest of his advanced metrics, 97th percentile for squared up rate, 97th percentile for chase rate, 96th percentile for whiff percentage. Like, it just makes sense with him.
And there is a whole different conversation to be had if you want to have an Adley Rutschman conversation about, hey, he doesn't have super high exit velocities and this and that. But the bottom line is his expected batting average is really good, which isn't telling you that he should be hitting 275. It's telling you that he's getting a little bit unlucky. And if we go throughout the course of a season, we can expect that his actual batting average is going to get closer to his expected batting average because that is just how he is hitting the ball with certain launch angles at a certain exit velocity. That's all it's saying. Expected stats are not always perfect. Ryan Mountcastle is a good example of somebody who had way better expected stats over the last 3 seasons than he had actual stats, but that was never really going to change because his expected slugging percentage was never going to be his actual slugging percentage because expected is normalizing based on different park factors, but the reality of the situation was that Mountcastle was playing at Camden Yards for 80 games out of the year, so his slugging percentage was never going to reach that expected number because it was a bunch of long fly ball outs to left field when the wall was pushed back. So it's not perfect. No stat is perfect.
It's forecasting.
Batting average isn't perfect.
Right.
It weighs a single the same as a home run. That's why we made OPS.
Precisely.
It's not perfect. Nobody is using it as gospel. It's context. It's context. That's it. Anyway.
Beautiful, Brendan.
Thank you. That's my weekly
That's
rant.
Rant number 2 now or
That's
3?
rant number 2 in as many weeks.
I think that could be 3 if we count the trading Samuel Basayo rant a few months ago.
That was a while ago.
That was an awesome one, though.
But maybe we should have a callback to our Ramón Urías rant from
Sure.
last year, where in the middle of the season, everyone was calling for Ramón Urías to be DFA'd. And aren't you sure glad they didn't do that? Because he's hitting close to 300. He is a good defender at both third base and second base, and he's back from the injured list today.
Woo-hoo.
So let's start with Ramón Urías. He is in the starting lineup for Game 1 of today's doubleheader. He gets called up. Dylan Carlson gets optioned back to AAA Norfolk, which was part of the discussion we were going to have, which is the fact that Emmanuel Rivera has been playing really well in both Urías' absence and Jordan Westburg's absence. If you are wondering why Urías gets called up before Jordan Westburg has the hamstring injury. Brandon Hyde said the hammy was still bothering him a little bit. Hammies are finicky like that, so Jordan Westburg presumably at least a few days behind Ramón Urías, but Urías is back, and he played some really good baseball at the beginning of the season. He was one of probably the 2 or 3 most valuable position players on this team through a struggling lineup to start the year.
Yeah, and Ramón Urías, we say all the time, the Ramón reminder, because that's true.
This is your Ramón reminder right now.
Ramón reminders once a week, and this is going to be it, because he provides a lot more value than people led on to believe for Ramón Urías. And I think that if I could go back and change, I mean, obviously he's going to be my unsung hero every year, year in, year out. He was that last year for me. But anyways, I digress. I think that we knew that he was a lot further along, and then optioning Dylan Carlson kind of just made sense, because obviously he went into the season with 3 minor league options, and the outfield was already crowded as is, and you kind of just were waiting until you got Ramón Urías and Jordan Westburg back. Emmanuel Rivera is doing very, very well in the infield, and he's kind of been playing a number of positions, and his stats in May are exceeding expectations for Rivera, and he really came in and kind of made that immediate impact that you needed when you lost Urías and Jordan Westburg to those hamstring injuries. You got to win against a starting pitcher, against a starting left-handed pitcher on Sunday, but getting Urías back is going to help that even more, just given him hitting .333 against lefties this season. So I think that the only thing in getting Urías back is good news. Yeah,
I mean, he has that third base, second base versatility. As you mentioned, he has been outstanding against left-handed pitching to start the year. He gets the start today against a right-handed pitcher as well, just because he has been flat out one of the best hitters on this team. But it is an interesting conversation as well for when Jordan Westburg gets back. What do you do with Emmanuel Rivera, who is 4th on this team in WAR, according to Baseball Reference, and he's played 8 games. He has accumulated .7 Baseball Reference WAR in 8 games, and you don't really have a spot for him. He doesn't have any minor league options. He does the same thing as Ramón Urías and Jordan Westburg, except Westburg and Ramón Urías give you more defensive versatility. I know Emmanuel Rivera can play first base, but you have 2 first basemen in Ryan Mountcastle and Ryan O'Hearn. So I think that opens up a discussion there of, do you keep somebody like Emmanuel Rivera, who has been playing very, very well in his limited sample size to start the season, but he is redundant because Ramón Urías and Jordan Westburg are already your third baseman? Or do you look to other position players that are struggling a little bit? Dylan Carlson was, of course, the obvious choice to get optioned. As you mentioned, he is the only one among this group of position players that had any options remaining. And so the next player that gets removed from this active roster for Jordan Westburg is going to have to be DFA'd.
Right.
And is that Emmanuel Rivera, who is playing really good baseball? Is that somebody like Jorge Mateo, who has been struggling to start the year, but gives you really different things than Emmanuel Rivera? It's defensive versatility, a potential backup shortstop. He can play shortstop, second base. Maybe you can put him in the outfield if you want to. We know the Orioles really value his speed on the bases as a pinch runner. Does Emmanuel Rivera realistically get any starts when Ramón Urías and Jordan Westburg are back on this team? You could make an argument for probably not, because Jordan Westburg is an everyday player and Ramón Urías is a really, really good bench piece. So that is going to be an interesting decision that the Orioles have to make. Do you go with the guy in Rivera who has been better but is redundant, or somebody else who gives you value in other places but hasn't played as well?
And especially when you get Jordan Westburg back, too. I mean, obviously he wasn't having his best season, and he wasn't the type of player that we expected him to come into 2025 as, especially knowing how insane he is in big moments and with runners in scoring position, and he really needs to get back to that type of player. It was obviously difficult because there were clearly some things going on beneath the surface in terms of injuries since the very start and towards the end of spring training, which is probably why he wasn't that type of player. But regardless, you're still going to get Westburg back, who is one of the most valuable players on this team, and still needs to kind of prove himself a little bit more, just like the other big names in this clubhouse who are still working to prove themselves offensively. But Jordan Westburg is not the type of guy where you see him not succeeding in the first half of so far in 2025, and you don't see that he was struggling and be like, oh, okay, he doesn't deserve a spot on this team, because Westburg is arguably one of the top players that will deserve a spot regardless if he's slumping or not.
Yeah, Jordan Westburg is going to come back and be an everyday starter. That's just the fact of the matter. Whether it is at third base primarily or if he gets bumped between third base and second base, who knows? I think Jackson Holliday has earned the right to be an everyday player 100%. As well. So I think once Westburg gets back, he is your everyday starter at third base. Jackson Holliday is your everyday starter at second base. And Ramón Urías is the guy who plays third or second when either of those guys needs an off day.
Yep.
But you're right. There was no doubt in anybody's mind that Jordan Westburg wasn't 100% at the beginning of the season. We saw Brandon Hyde keep him out of the lineup day in and day out to start the year before he even went on the injured list. Obviously, there was the notorious game, the fourth game of the year against Toronto, where Jordan Westburg has 3 home runs in the first 3 games, and he gets held out of that fourth game of the series in Toronto after being the hottest hitter on the team, and everyone's going, what the heck? Come to find out, Brandon Hyde said he could barely walk into the locker room that day, and it certainly begs the question of maybe Jordan Westburg should have gone on the injured list before that, but Jordan Westburg is just a tough dude and tried to grind it out, and he was DHing a lot. Going on the injured list was definitely the smart decision for Jordan Westburg, and I would anticipate that once he comes back, he is going to be a crucial piece of getting this lineup back to hitting the way that it should be hitting on paper. He was probably the most clutch hitter in this lineup last year. He was, his OPS with runners in scoring position was outstanding. It was in the upper 900s. So getting Westburg back is going to be a huge boost to this lineup. Ramón Urías is as well. Again, it's somebody who was hitting close to 300 at the beginning of this year. So those two guys should be a huge boost, as is Zach Eflin, who is back in the starting rotation.
Thank goodness.
Captain Obvious here, getting Zach Eflin back is massive. He's the best starting pitcher on this team. He looked really good in his start on Friday. That is a massive boost to a starting rotation that really needs it.
Yeah, and we've just been talking about week in, week out of how much you need Eflin and Rodriguez to come back.
Count down the days.
And it was finally the time that we got Zach Eflin back. But first start since April 7th, he looked great. I mean, he went 5 innings pitched. You would have hoped that he got a little bit deeper, but he was still kind of getting up there with this pitch count. But 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 Ks against the Angels on Sunday. It was kind of a great lineup and a great game to make a start back from the injured list for Eflin, especially with an Angels lineup without Mike Trout and just kind of like easing back into it a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing that I found interesting, his average exit velocity on the day was 80.4 miles per hour. His season-wide average is 91.4, so that just kind of tells you like he was really getting some good weak contact on those. And for context, Tarek Skubal's average exit velocity for this season, or in his last start against the Rangers, is 79.1 miles per hour. So that kind of just gives you a little bit of comparison of how elite Eflin is and how much you wanted him back.
Really good. Yeah, and Brandon Hyde said there was no doubt that they were going to get the same stuff from Zach Eflin. It wasn't a concern when he gave up 2 runs in the first inning. The Angels are an aggressive team. Zach Eflin works in the zone a lot. An aggressive team will every once in a while be able to get some hits, but Eflin was able to limit the damage the rest of the way. And as you mentioned, he only goes 5 innings, tosses 83 pitches. That is only a result of the fact that he only made 1 rehab start because he was dying to get back to the big leagues. You heard Eflin talk about it after the start on Friday. He basically said there's no better feeling in the world than being out here with these guys and being on the big league mountain. You weren't going to stop him from getting back up to the big league. So it was just 1 rehab start in Aberdeen where he threw 58 pitches. And then on Friday, he throws 83 pitches. I would imagine that after getting stretched out to 83 pitches, 5 more days of rest, he is going to be able to work into that mid-90 pitch range from now on, and you can let him go as long as he is able to go. But he just provides so much stability for this starting rotation. You're not going to get many, if any, Zach Eflin blow-up starts. You're going to get gems. You are going to get 5, 6, 7 innings with consistency, fewer than 3 or 4 earned runs with consistency. And I know that Eflin isn't maybe considered an ace around baseball. He is not one of the top guys who is going to strike out 12 hitters in 7 innings of work, but he is going to be really consistent. He is going to be solid. He's not going to walk guys. He's going to work deep into games, and he is going to keep you in every baseball game that he starts.
Right, and it also wasn't a surprise that with Eflin's solid and consistent pitching came a win out of the Orioles.
Right.
And also strong showing both offensively and defensively, where we've seen sometimes it's a domino effect and it starts to crumble where you have weak starting pitching and then there's defensive errors and then there's offensive issues. This game wasn't like that. There were 0 defensive errors, solid pitching from the bullpen, only 1 earned run from Felix Bautista, but you were already up by 5 at that point. So I guess that's okay, low leverage, and just getting Felix Bautista back into playing day after day and whatnot. Right. But this was a really strong overall win and something that you really needed from the Orioles, who needed another series win, especially against a struggling Angels team, and coming off of a series sweep against where the Twins swept the Orioles. Exactly. This is exactly what the Orioles needed with the day off and then a second day off, technically. Hopefully it doesn't break the momentum a little bit. It also could be a good thing for guys that just needed some rest, especially with this bullpen. Yeah,
and you have a bunch of guys coming back too, right? Ramón Urías was not reinstated before yesterday's game. He is now reinstated before today's game. But it was a great win on Sunday, as you mentioned. You got a good starting pitching performance, and you got a good starting pitching performance on Friday as well from Tomoyuki Sugano. And that's what you need. Again, Captain Obvious here, but in the games where the Orioles get a decent start, they are good. They are now 3-1 with Zach Eflin after their win on Sunday. They are 5-3 in games started by Tomoyuki Sugano. They're 8-4. That's good.
Yeah.
Dean Kramer has been excellent in his last 2 starts. 14 innings, 2 earned, 10 Ks, 3 walks. The Orioles have split those 2 games, but Dean Kramer has done everything that he possibly could. That's a good top 3. If Dean Kramer continues to turn things around, you are still waiting for guys like Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells to come back, but those are injuries that are going to be down the line. And so this is kind of the starting 5 at this point. Zach Eflin, Tomoyuki Sugano, Dean Kramer, and then Cade Povich and Kyle Gibson. I think those last 2, you could see some shakeups there. Trevor Rogers is still down in AAA Norfolk. Chase McDermott is in AAA Norfolk as well. Those 2 guys are rotation options. And if Povich is rocky here or there, if Kyle Gibson continues to struggle, maybe we will see McDermott or Trevor Rogers at some point here soon. But I think this is kind of your 5 for the time being, and you can win with this 5. As mentioned, Eflin and Sugano have been excellent. Dean Kramer has really turned things around. Kyle Gibson needs to be better.
Yep.
And Kyle Gibson will be the first one to tell you that. He has not been good so far. The biggest reason why is probably his sweeper. His sweeper over the past few years, it was one of the best sweepers in baseball pretty consistently. And right now, it is his worst pitch. The sweeper is really bad. Batters are hitting .750 against his sweeper. They are slugging .1714 against his cutter. I mean, the top 4 pitches that he throws frequency-wise all have a 50% or more hard hit rate. That's not going to play. Kyle Gibson knows that is not going to play. I am anticipating that Kyle Gibson is going to be able to turn things around. The Orioles are certainly hoping that he is going to be able to do that. He didn't have a spring training. He is still working to get ramped back up. He faced 2 aggressive lineups in the Yankees and Angels, where, again, sometimes those aggressive lineups can just get you with a guy like Gibson who is going to work in the zone and try to get ground balls. But he's got to be better because for the next stretch now, as I mentioned, he is probably your 5th starter unless you make a move to Chase McDermott or Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, and Kyle Gibson, yes, it's not great. That everybody knows that, but it's still a little bit, it's progressively getting a little bit better. Maybe not the last start, but the start after his first one. Anything can be better than his first start, yeah. So let's just put that out there. I'm aware of that. But still, as long as you can just keep in the games, and that was what we saw a little bit from his second start. The third start fell off a little bit from there. But Gibson, still not great, but just keep the games close, and it's been a closer margin of loss, which is what you need. I'm not saying that he can't still get better because it's definitely a necessity, and especially when someone is still fighting for that 5th rotation spot and you have other depth pieces. Same goes for Povich. Povich was one of those guys that we talked about a few weeks ago where if he can be as consistent as he was in a few starts, then that's great, and that's what you need from this starting rotation who hasn't been consistent, and there's also other guys that are knocking on the door and will be knocking on the door the more that they get better rehab starts and healthier. But Povich and Gibson still definitely need to make that next jump into the next level and topic of conversation of they are going to be able to post every 5th day and you can trust them in those categories. Kramer, like you mentioned, is doing just that, and he's following the exact same script that we knew that was going to happen in the jump from March and April to May in his career stats. And the great thing is that his career ERA in May keeps dropping each start that he makes. So you hope that it keeps going on that pattern. It started out as a 4.10 career ERA in May before he even made a start in May this season, then to 3.72 and then to 3.62. So you just hope that he keeps going along that pattern as well.
Yeah, and you can have stability in the back end of the rotation without having elite numbers. Dean Kramer, who knows if he continues to keep up this fantastic stretch that he's been on with his last 2 starts, but if he is just solid and good enough, you take that in the back end of the rotation. Cade Povich, as you mentioned, you just need to avoid the blow-ups. He's got 5 starts with 3 earned runs or fewer, and then 2 starts with 5 earned runs and 7 earned runs. Those 2 starts are going to get you out of baseball games, and as we have talked about before, those kind of outings are understandable for a young pitcher who really doesn't have that many career starts under his belt, but he is under more of a magnifying glass because of the injuries and because of the struggles that you have had throughout the rotation. Got to remember, this was a pitcher that we weren't talking about breaking camp with the team because he was the 7th guy, because it was Eflin, Grayson, Sugano, Morton, Kramer, Suarez.
Yeah.
Those were the guys that were fighting for rotation spots. Albert Suarez was probably your 6th guy, maybe in the bullpen, and then Cade Povich was 7th.
Yeah, and maybe even Trevor Rogers, too, if he was healthy.
Yeah, Trevor Rogers right in that conversation as well. Chase McDermott in that conversation, but I think Povich was probably 7th if everybody was healthy coming into the year, and he has been thrust into a position where he is all of a sudden a very important piece of this rotation. Kyle Gibson was signed very late into the season and is now, again, an important piece of this rotation because of the struggles of Charlie Morton and other injuries. But as I mentioned, you just need stability. You can't have as many blow-up starts. An interesting stat that I found here, take the Yankees as an example. They are the best team in the American League East. They are one of the better teams in baseball. They have 2 really, really good starting pitchers. Max Fried has made 9 starts. He has a 1.11 ERA. He is probably the American League Cy Young frontrunner. I know the Orioles don't have a Cy Young frontrunner, but just bear with me for this example. Carlos Rodon has also been really good. He has a 3.29 ERA in 9 starts so far this year. If you are, kind of taking it from a more broad context, the Yankees have 2 good pitchers at the front of the end of their rotation. The Orioles right now have 2 good pitchers at the front end of their rotation in Zach Eflin and Tomoyuki Sugano, who has a 2.72. Neither of those guys are the Cy Young candidate that Max Fried is, but bottom line, there's 2 really good pitchers at the front end anchoring your rotation. The other 4 guys that have made starts consistently for the Yankees this year, Will Warren, Carlos Carrasco, Clark Schmidt, Marcus Stroman. They have combined to make 22 starts. None of them have an ERA below 4.50. The best one among that group is Clark Schmidt, who has a 4.73 ERA in 5 starts. None of that is good. Will Warren's got a 4.75. Carlos Carrasco has a 5.91. Marcus Stroman has an 11.57. None of those are particularly good ERAs or anything to write home about. The difference is that those 4 guys have combined to make 22 starts, and they have allowed more than 4 earned runs twice. So they're not giving you outstanding numbers. Somebody like Will Warren, for example, he's pitching into the 4th and 5th inning with regularity. He's not going really deep into games, but he's allowing 2 or 3 earned runs. And so his ERA doesn't look good at a 4.75, but he's keeping you in every game that he starts. And that's all you need from the back end of this Orioles rotation. If Cade Povich can consistently go 5 innings, 3 earned, and give the bullpen 4 innings of work with just 3 runs on the board, that's going to win you a lot of games because this offense on paper should be able to put up 4 or 5 runs a game.
Yeah.
That's all you need from Povich. 5 innings and 3 earned isn't going to be a great ERA. None of those Yankees guys have a great ERA. But you are in almost every baseball game that they pitch, and they're not the elite guys like Max Fried and Carlos Rodon, but they keep you in every game, and their offense is good enough to win it. That's all you need from the back end of this Orioles rotation. Yes, you need the lineup to step up too in that scenario, but the lineup was a top 5 scoring unit in baseball last year. They have the ability to get back to that place, but you need more stability from the back end, and you can't keep having the blow-up starts.
Yeah.
You just need solid ones.
Yeah, no, that's a really great comparison to make, especially because we've been talking every week to week about how much consistency is needed. Yes, it's great to have fantastic 7-inning starts from Sugano and Eflin in 6-inning starts, and that is exactly what you want from your top two guys, but you still kind of need close games. You can't just be giving up 9 runs or even 9 hits to a team just because you can't. You got to stay in it, and you got to be able to keep the game close, and that's exactly it. They don't need to be flashy, Gibson and Povich, but they just need to keep the games close so that you can at least rely on your bullpen and your offense a little bit more.
Yeah, and you saw it on Sunday, right? It wasn't Zach Eflin's best start with 5 innings and 2 earned runs, but you were in the ballgame, and it gave the Orioles an opportunity for really the first time in a while that I can remember, at least, where they break through in the middle innings. They scored 3 runs off of a good left-handed pitcher in Tyler Anderson. We haven't seen that from the offense in a while, but there was at least, I don't know if it's a mentality thing or whatever it may be, but they actually came back in the middle innings. They put up some runs in the 5th and 6th. They exploded in the 5th and 6th for a couple of runs. The offense has the ability to do that. I mean, the 7 runs they scored was the most they had scored since April 19th, which isn't great, but on paper, you get some guys back. Tyler O'Neill is back. Ramón Urías is back. Those are going to be 2 big pieces of the lineup. Jackson Holliday has been absolutely mashing. He's hitting 300 over his last 20 games. Gunnar Henderson is back. OPS over 1,000 in May, hitting 351. Ryan Mountcastle has been surging a little bit. He's hitting 314 in May with 4 doubles. The power needs to get up a little bit, but there are some reasons to be encouraged about the offense. And if you can get some more stability from the back end of the rotation, you should be able to win more games.
Yeah.
An easy formula, right?
Yeah.
Just don't allow that many runs and then score more runs. We're kind of cracking this baseball thing.
We're cracking the code. It's
a
two-way street. Got to have strong pitching or decent pitching, just keep you in the game, and you got to have an offense that will back up the starting pitching. That's not a surprise. We've been saying that all season.
That's the hard-hitting analysis everybody listens to the Bird's Nest
Yeah, that's
for.
why you tune into
What's
us.
wrong with the Orioles? Well, they need to limit the amount of runs
And
that they are allowing and also score more runs than they are currently doing.
Exactly. But you're right. I mean, you are getting some things out of guys like Ryan Mountcastle that you really needed, especially when there were struggles against left-handed pitchers throughout the start of the 2025 season. Ryan Mountcastle right now on a 7-game hitting streak. You kind of proved that you can get a win out of a left-handed starting pitcher on Sunday, which was very much needed to kind of shift that narrative than what it's been all season. Like you mentioned, Jackson Holliday is mashing right now. 89th percentile for chase rate, 74th percentile for launch angle sweet spot. Gunnar, like you mentioned, is obviously doing what Gunnar does. What's interesting is in his career, the month of June is his best batting average. So if he can continue kind of making May really, really strong, you can only hope that it just continues that pattern for June and he's even better. Adley, we've talked at length about his advanced metrics. It's just not producing the results, but that's coming, especially when you look at the math and the expected batting average for him.
Yeah.
Another great sign was Cedric Mullins coming out of a slump on Sunday. He snapped a 5-game no-hit streak. Hopefully, when you saw how good he was in March and April, that you can get back to that form a little bit from him. But went 2 for 4 on Sunday, and just hopefully that you can kind of start to feel like everything's falling into place, especially getting Eflin back, Ramón Urías back, hopefully Grayson and Westberg back soon.
Yeah, and I think it is underrated for as much as we have talked about the struggles with the starting pitching. Jordan Westberg and Colton Cowser are 2 of the most important pieces of this lineup, and you have been without healthy versions of them for a long time. You've been flat out without Colton Cowser, and you've been without a healthy Jordan Westberg since the beginning of the year. It's a long stretch to go without 2 of your best hitters, and I know you can't toss out a lot of excuses for a team that has played as poorly as the Orioles have played to start this year, and that's not what we're trying to do here. But Cowser and Westberg are 2 very important pieces, and so it'll be huge to get Westberg back. Cedric Mullins, I think you knew was going to come back down to earth. He wasn't going to have an OPS over 1,000 forever, but we kind of know who Cedric Mullins is, and that's still a really good player. It's somebody who is going to be an above-league average bat with a 750, 775 OPS and be a good defensive center fielder. That's still a really valuable piece to have. And it's a reliable one because that's what he's been over the past few seasons. So I think most people were anticipating that he would kind of get back to those sorts of numbers, and hopefully he has another hot stretch here somewhere. But if he's around that 750, 775 OPS, that's a good player. Heston Kjerstad has really been struggling. I think you could really see him hopefully step up a little bit more in the absence of Colton Cowser. You were counting on him to be able to do that as somebody who is close to an everyday player, but he's hitting 206 right now. Adley Rutschman, as we mentioned, the advanced stats are good, but it's got to show up on the field. He's got to start putting the results actually there. And then Tyler O'Neill, again, I know was struggling through injury a little bit, but he's really been struggling as well. Tyler O'Neill and Adley Rutschman, they're going to play every day, regardless of who is healthy and who is not. Adley Rutschman is your franchise catcher. Tyler O'Neill just got a big contract in the offseason to come in and be a middle-of-the-lineup bat who is going to mash against left-handed pitching. Regardless of who comes back, Cowser, Westberg, Urías, whoever, those two guys are going to start very consistently, and they need to start hitting because they are really important pieces of the lineup. Adley Rutschman is going to hit anywhere from second to fourth day in and day out. Tyler O'Neill is going to hit anywhere from second to fifth day in and day out. So you need those guys to start hitting flat out. Again, they would tell you the same thing. They are going to be important pieces of the lineup, and they got to hit. There are other good things happening. As we mentioned, Gunnar Henderson is really coming around. Jackson Holliday has been excellent. Ryan Mountcastle is starting to turn things around a little bit. But if Adley and O'Neill don't hit, then this lineup isn't going to live up to its potential. So they need to, flat out.
Yeah, and it's great to see Jackson Holliday as well having such a great season, especially after
he's here.
All the criticism from last season and just making his way, settling into his role as an everyday big league player, especially because you are seeing him get a lot more reps against lefty starting pitchers too, because he is becoming that everyday player like we've mentioned. Tyler O'Neill, like you mentioned, he be the first person to tell you that he knows that he needs to start mashing lefty pitchers way more than he is right now because the numbers aren't great, and he'll be the first person to tell you that. Just historically, he is the one that you brought in to be able to do that. His expected slugging is 486, so there's just a lot. The numbers are there for him underlying wise, and he just needs to be able to push through, stay healthy, and be the guy that you brought him in to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I do want to address a couple of comments that we have gotten. I keep seeing this, that Adley Rutschman is Matt Wieters, and people are acting like it's Matt Wieters was good. That's a 4-time All-Star who had 18 career WAR for the Orioles. Are we acting like Matt Wieters wasn't good?
That was my second-round pick in the fantasy
First of all,
draft
Adley Rutschman has multiple seasons with an OPS higher than Matt Wieters' career OPS, so I think Adley Rutschman is a better hitter and has the potential to be a better hitter. But again, why are we acting like that's a burn? Matt Wieters was a really good player.
Yeah.
Anyway, the last thing we wanted to touch on here, the Orioles' schedule for the month of May, it had been talked about in a way where, and I think we were guilty of this too, where it was, hey, this is a lighter schedule going into May, at least based on how teams were playing coming into the month. It's not that light of a schedule anymore. They are looking for some revenge here against the Twins. The Orioles have a doubleheader against Minnesota today. Final game of the series tomorrow afternoon. The Twins have won 8 of their last 10.
Yep.
I know 3 of those are against the Orioles, but the Twins, again, were a team that was too talented to be as struggling as much as they were. So they're back up over 500. You play the Nationals at home after that. The Brewers are a sub-500 team. I know the Red Sox are going through some weird stuff with Rafael Devers. They're right around 500. The Cardinals, who we saw as kind of a lighter team, they're 9-1 in their last 10. I know you end the month with the White Sox, but you've got a lot of 500 teams, a lot of teams that are surging on the calendar at this point. So what started as hey, this is an opportunity to win a lot of games in May. I know you don't have the Yankees on the schedule this month, and you don't have the Dodgers or some other teams like that, but it's still a lot of good teams.
Right.
The Twins we just saw are really good. They are surging. The Cardinals are surging. The Brewers and Red Sox are still dangerous teams. It's just not that easy of a month.
The one that you could look at is the Nationals and say, okay, they're on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 game losing streak, which
Yeah,
you could
you're
be
catching
able
the Nationals at the
to
right
get that back.
time. You
Catching
catch
them
the
at the right
White Sox at the end of the month.
But the Nationals are also playing really red-hot Cardinals teams that they lost to, and the Guardians and the Braves. So it's still a good team, and they have a lot of raw, young talent, and you lost to them on the road. Luckily, you can face them away, or at home, excuse me. The Twins don't historically have the best record on the road this season, so it's good to get them coming here to Baltimore. But the Red Sox, you can never really count out. That's going to be a 4-game series. You should hope that you can either win or split that series. And then the Brewers, the Cardinals, the White Sox. It's not an easy month of May anymore. Sometimes that those can be the hardest too when you're facing a team that you know that you should beat. And it's a lot harder to stay in that mentality because it's easy to fall to teams that you should beat because you play down to that level.
Sure.
So you hope that doesn't happen, and you hope that these are really good matchups and the Orioles can bounce back after 2 days of rest now, a series win against the Angels on the road, coming back at home. Hopefully the weather doesn't play into account because it's really cruddy weather this week in Baltimore.
It's kind of a terrible week. It is rainy. It is gloomy. It is gross. It is synonyms. Yeah, it's nasty. But look, regardless of who is on the schedule, you've got to win games because you are 9 games under 500 at this point. The division of the playoffs and things like that are not completely lost. You cannot lose things like that early in the season. You are 7.5 games back of the Yankees. That would take a heck of a comeback to make a division push. But look, the wild card has expanded, right? You have a lot of opportunities to be a wild card team. The Athletics currently hold the 3rd and final wild card spot at this point, and they're 2 games over 500. You have to imagine that the Orioles can get back to being a 500 team. The playoffs are not out of the question. It's going to take a turnaround. You need to start playing a lot better baseball, and you need to do it now. But as I mentioned, regardless of who's on the schedule, you got to do it.
Right.
You got to win games because we're talking about a lot of 500 teams. You need to be better than those 500 teams if you were going to make the playoffs. So be better than them. Take 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
They took 2 out of 3 against the Angels, which is a team they should beat. Good. They did that. Do it more.
Right.
Take 2 of 3 against the Nationals. That's a team you should beat. Take 2 of 3 against the White Sox. Take 3 of 3 against the White Sox. Why not? That'd be fun. You got to start beating these teams. Flat out. That's the analysis. Score more runs, don't allow as many runs, and win baseball games.
And get players
That's
back
how you do it.
from the injured list.
And get healthy.
Yep.
I think we nailed that analysis today. But I think that'll just about do it for this week's edition of The Bird's Nest. Hopefully you can enjoy some rainy, dreary baseball here at Camden Yards this week. They've got a homestand, 2 today against the Twins, afternoon game tomorrow, 3-game weekend series against the Nationals. So we will wave to you from our window here on the 5th floor of the warehouse. Be sure to wave and say hi. But we'll see you again next week. If you followed along with us live here on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for doing so 1 hour early. If you didn't catch us today, you can catch us after the fact on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us here on The Bird's Nest. Big thank you to Amy Jennings behind the scenes for producing this one. For Annie Claff, I am Brendan Mortensen, and we'll catch you next time.